We are 1 week into the free agency period here in the 2024-25 NFL season. And through 1 week, how much have the Carolina Panthers improved? We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays here on the show throughout the offseason, I'm going to answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions either at me or DM me. But of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. We are through 1 week of free agency here in the 2024-25 NFL season. The Carolina Panthers and the other 31 teams in the NFL have spent a ton of money on players that they hope will improve their rosters in 2024. So on today's show, I want to spend time discussing how much the Panthers have improved on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, just overall through the first week of free agency. Now, the Panthers, as I mentioned, they've made all the big moves that you should expect them to make. They are still waiting to hear back from Jadeveon Clowney, who flew up to New York on Monday, is going to meet on Tuesday with the Jets. We'll see whether he's an addition to the Carolina Panthers or if he's going to go to New York or possibly elsewhere. That is a position of need, obviously, for the Carolina Panthers. Clowney's a player who last year produced at a high level of 9.5 sacks. He's a hometown guy, as he grew up in Rock Hill, played at South Point High School, then went to the University of South Carolina. So it would be a nice addition for the Carolina Panthers, just not something I think is going to make or break the Panthers, as I discussed on yesterday's show. But it's a position of need. He is a player that performed last year. So obviously the Carolina Panthers should be interested in bringing back the semi-hometown kid here to Charlotte for this upcoming season. They're also going to visit with some wide receivers this week. Mike Williams, also a local area product, as he played at Clemson. They're also going to talk to Michael Gallup, the former Dallas Cowboy. The Panthers are still looking at players, but as far as the big money signings, the kind of impact players, don't expect them to be signing too many of them moving forward as they start to shift their focus towards pro days and, of course, the draft going on up in Detroit in April. So right now, let's go ahead and look at the offensive side of the ball and see how much it has improved through 1 week of free agency. Last year, the Panthers' offense was hellacious, and a big reason why it was so bad was the offensive line. Ike Ekwonu regressed. They had so many injuries at the guard spots. Austin Corbett started off the season on PUP after the torn ACL suffered in Week 18 against the Saints in the following season. He did not play the first 6 weeks of the year. Then when he came back, did not play well, then went out with another injury to that same knee, this time a meniscus tear. So you did not have Austin Corbett. You have Brady Christensen for one game at left guard, and going back to that 2022 season when it felt like with Ekwonu, with Christensen, with Bozeman, with Corbett, with Moton, that the offensive line had finally been fixed. Christensen was the weak link on that offensive line. So you lost him, but you also lost a player who was not one of your top offensive linemen to begin with, having to put in guys like Chandler Zavala, Cade Mays, Calvin Throckmorton, Gabe Jackson, name after name after name, who did not produce at a high level for the Carolina Panthers. At any level of football, whether it's Pop Warner, it's middle school, it's high school, it's college, it's the NFL, it's the UFL about to go on soon here. Spring football's back thanks to The Rock. You cannot win at a high level without an offensive line. You can barely win at all without an offensive line, as the Panthers saw last year, becoming the first 2-15 team in the history of the NFL. So the offensive line was a priority, if not priority number one for the Carolina Panthers. And really, the top tier priority is helping Bryce Young. And then you have a bunch of other things a part of that priority, like fixing the offensive line, getting wide receivers, that go to the top priority, which is fixing and helping Bryce Young this offseason. So as far as the offensive line, the Carolina Panthers spared no expense. Robert Hunt signed a 5-year, $100 million deal last Monday. Then later on that evening, they signed former Seattle Seahawks guard Damien Lewis to a 4-year, $53 million deal. $89 million, y'all, guaranteed for Hunt and Lewis combined over the next couple of seasons here in Carolina. Robert Hunt was excellent last year in Miami. Had a hamstring injury that kind of slowed him down, but still in all the PFF categories that matter for offensive linemen, whether it's overall grade, blocking grade, as far as run and pass, he was a top 10 offensive lineman, allowed 5. This right here, you're looking at it on YouTube if you're watching, 5 total pressures, 1 quarterback hit, 1 sack, was penalized twice. Damien Lewis playing left guard the last couple seasons in Seattle. He's had years where he's been one of the top 15 left guards and offensive lineman period, offensive guards period in the NFL. He's had years where last year where he was just okay, but much better than Christensen was, much better than some of the other guys, of course, who stepped in there and struggled mightily were for the Carolina Panthers a year ago. The Panthers wanted to go out there, bring in some beef. Both these guys are 330 plus guys who are experienced, who have shown that they can protect, that they can block as far as the run game goes as well. They made that a priority. They went out there, paid the money to get these players, and they have absolutely improved the offensive line. We'll see what Ike Ekwonu is going to do at left tackle this season, but now having Brady Christensen as a swing tackle, his more natural position on the outside, that improves the offensive line. Signing Hunt and Lewis improves the offensive line. Center, we'll see with Bradley Bozeman. Brady Christensen, Bradley Bozeman always trips me up with Bradley Bozeman now signing with the Chargers, no longer here in Carolina. We'll see what Austin Corbett's able to do at that center position. I still think the Panthers need to find a long-term solution there at center. Right tackle, Taylor Bowden, not concerned about him at all. This is an improved unit. You can still develop guys like Cade Mays. You can still develop Chandler Zavala and see what they can give you down the road. Nash Jensen, who was a favorite of the previous staff as well. Continue to develop those guys, but don't put them in a situation where they're the next man up. And it may be that way based off of what injuries may occur this upcoming season. And fingers crossed, none of them happened. The Panthers got bad injury luck last year. Typically, you get good injury luck the next season. I'm hoping that's going to be the case in 2024 because this team sorely needs it. But the offensive line is absolutely dramatically improved with the 2 signings of Robert Hunt and Damien Lewis and finding new roles for Austin Corbett, which TBD there at center, and Brady Christensen going back to his natural position. So that is an improved unit. Tight end, that's hard to say right now. I'm just going to call it a push. They're about the same. Hayden Hurst leaving, going to also the Chargers where Bradley Bozeman signed on Monday. That is not a big loss for the Panthers considering what he provided last year. The concussions did not help as he missed the final 7 games of the season. And even before that, he was rarely targeted. Week 1 against Atlanta where he caught Bryce Young's first career touchdown and immediately threw it into the stands. I guess that should have been an omen to what was going to happen the rest of the season. Hayden Hurst did not provide the kind of pass catching ability the Carolina Panthers felt like they were spending on him when they gave him a 3-year, $20-something million deal this time last year during free agency. That's a disappointment. But also, when you look at the tight end group, he really is the only one that has shown in their career that they can be that kind of a player. So in a way, it's a little bit of a loss because of the potential there, and not even the potential, just the proven production and stops in Baltimore and Atlanta and then in Cincinnati, not so much here in Carolina. He has shown he can be that kind of player. Is that still going to be the case for him moving over to the Chargers and beyond in his career in the NFL? We will see. But Tommy Tremble so far has not shown that he can really do that at the kind of level that Hayden Hurst even has done it in the past. Stephon Sullivan, same kind of situation there. Ian Thomas, the book is out on him. We know what Ian Thomas is at this point in his career. They're bringing back Stephon Sullivan. They restructured Thomas's deal. Tommy Tremble is the de facto tight end 1 and really earned that role last year, but new offensive scheme, new offensive coaching staff, roles can change. So right now the tight end position is still among the worst in the NFL. So it's really a push for me when looking at it. Running back, similar, but not one of the worst groups in the NFL. I do think Chuba Hubbard can be pretty good for the Panthers this year. I think that with Hunt and with Lewis, just a healthy offensive line, that this is a team that can be able to run the football well. And Dave Canales, rather, has come out and said that he's going to be stubborn when it comes to running the football in Carolina this upcoming season by bringing in Lewis and bringing in Hunt and having Chuba Hubbard back here and right now retaining Miles Sanders. I think this is a football team that should be able to run, and they need to be able to run the ball to be able to help Bryce Young take the pressure off of him and not make this an offense that's overly reliant on either running or passing the football. But especially last year, all they wanted to do, it seemed like, was pass, and they never were able to establish an identity. It seems like the identity this year is going to be running the football and then doing whatever you can do off of that in the pass game, which I'm excited to see as we get closer to the season here in 2024. So running back wise, they haven't added anybody. It's not a surprise at all. I had a mailbag question earlier this week where someone felt like that was an part of the offseason so far. The Panthers haven't done anything at running back. I don't think there's anything really to do. A guy like DJ Dallas, who was just released by Seattle or is leaving Seattle because he's a free agent. Maybe you add him, but I don't think that's really all that necessary at the current moment in time. Looking at Miles Sanders still in the roster, maybe they get rid of him post June 1. We'll see how things materialize throughout the OTAs, the offseason program. It's going to be coming up here over the next month or so. But Hubbard, feel good about him. Sanders, maybe he can bounce back if he actually sticks around in year 2 in Carolina. Raheem Black's year, he was offered an exclusive rights free agent deal. So he should be back here in Carolina. Running back position, it's still a push to me, but it's looking like Chuba Hubbard's going to be workhorse back heading into 2024. And I wouldn't mind if they wanted to spend a draft pick on a running back. Wide receiver, buddy, do they need to improve this position? And they have gone out there and done it. Traded Diontae Jackson and pick 178 to the Pittsburgh Steelers for Diontae Johnson and pick 240. He's an excellent route runner. Provide speed, twitch, playmaking ability. I don't know if he's necessarily a wide receiver 1, but he's immediately the best wide receiver here in Carolina because the only good receiver in Carolina was Adam Thielen, and he's 34 years old. And you look at Terrace Marshall still on the roster. He hasn't done anything through 3 years so far in Carolina. Jonathan Mingo looked overwhelmed at times last year, could not separate. Still a work in progress as a second-round pick last year for the Carolina Panther. Heads into his second year in the NFL. But you're getting a former second-team All-Pro as a returner, a former Pro Bowler in 2021 where he had over 100 receptions, over 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, one of the top 25 receivers in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus a year ago, and can get separation, which is something that was sorely lacking in Carolina last year. Chart couldn't do it. Thielen even struggled at times to be able to do it. Mingo couldn't do it. Anyone else who came out there at the wide receiver position lined up, they did not separate, did not help out Bryce Young. Diontae Johnson, that should not be a problem at all here in Carolina. Love seeing that signing. Bringing back Amir Smith-Marset as well. I think that's a smart signing just to see what he can do on offense. We saw what he could do as a returner, had the return for a touchdown against the Bears. Also had a couple of boneheaded mistakes throughout the season. It was a little hit or miss there. Didn't think he's the greatest returner in the world, but he does offer something as a gadget guy in the offense. And maybe with Dave Canales' creativity, he can be more of an all-around wide receiver and still be a gadget guy using the offense heading into 2024. So wide receiver, just by adding Diontae Johnson, is clearly a position group that is improved, but still needs more. Quarterback, they haven't added anything. You still have Bryce Young. You still have Andy Dalton, and they'll bring in some other quarterbacks who can take some reps during training camp and the offseason program as well. But by adding Diontae Johnson, by adding Robert Hunt, by adding Damian Lewis, the Carolina Panthers should be better off with their quarterback position and with Bryce Young there because he should have guys who can protect him and also a running game because those guys can also open up some holes to be able to run the football. And he now has a receiver who can separate and do something with it after the catch. That should improve Bryce Young in the overall quarterback room here in Carolina. So the offense as a whole, I feel like the quarterback should be improved because of the additions on the offensive line and at wide receiver. Running back, still the same, but there is potential there with Chuba Hubbard. Tight end, still bad, if not terrible. But we'll see what they do over the next couple of weeks as we head into the draft and head into late April. So there's still time to do something at tight end. But right now, that is still a glaring need for the Carolina Panthers, at least in my opinion. O-line's better. Tight end still bad. Running back, basically the same. Wide receiver has improved. Still need more. And quarterback, because of all the additions made on the offensive line and the one addition made at wide receiver, he should be improved as well. The Panthers offense, is better. Now, how much better will it be? We'll have to wait and see once we get to the season and see some of the other moves that are made over the next couple of weeks and months. So that's the Panthers offense. What about the Panthers defense? No Brian Burns, no Frankie Luvu, no Diontae Johnson. Can this still be a potentially top-tier unit in 2024? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. And y'all, the NCAA tournament is coming to Charlotte this weekend. The first and second round on Thursday and on Saturday at Spectrum Center. Go get your tickets over at Game Time. Tech guesswork out of buying tickets of Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It's going to be a new look defense for the Carolina Panthers in 2024 after trading away Brian Burns and Diontae Johnson, releasing Von Bell, and watching Frankie Luvu walk to Washington. The Panthers need to go out there and add some more players to fill those holes throughout the first week of free agency, and we'll see if those additions will get the Panthers back to being a top 5 defense in some respects. Last season, total defense as far as yardage giving up, they were a top 5 defense, but as far as scoring defense, they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. As far as red zone defense, they weren't great. Stopping the run, weren't good at that either. And there were many factors to why that was the case. And the big reason why they gave up a lot of points and weren't great in the red zone was just because the defense was out there on the field a lot, because the offense wasn't great and they weren't always put in the most advantageous position. So expecting the offense to be a little bit better, even if the defense regressing, maybe they can still find a middle ground between losing the players and then getting more better positions this upcoming season in 2024. So let's look at the defense and whether it has improved. And just bring up the fact that Brian Burns is not here, and that Frankie Luvu is not here, that they've gotten rid of Von Bell, who's okay for the Panthers, and they've watched Diontae Johnson, who's been a starter at corner over the last couple seasons, leave. It's hard to believe that they would be better, but let's look at all the position groups to see whether that is the case. Defensive line. This is an area where I felt like the Carolina Panthers really did need to add a starting caliber player, because last year they did not get enough out of Deshaun Williams. You saw players like Nick Thurman and LeBron Ray step up and actually play better than the 30-year-old veteran who followed Ejiro Evero from Denver to Carolina. It was a nice story for how he was able to get to this level of the NFL, but still did not see the production that you would hope and really expect out of a starter like Deshaun Williams last year. So the Carolina Panthers went out there, spent 3 years, $22.5 million on A'Shawn Robinson, who spent 3 years in LA on the same defense as Ejiro Evero. Now, not in the same necessarily like coaching staff room or like meeting rooms as Ejiro Evero, but still understands the scheme. Ejiro Evero understands who the player is, and the Panthers need somebody who can help them stop the run. Derek Brown was outstanding at it last year. Most tackles by a defensive lineman in NFL history. Excuse me, in 2023. So he's coming back, needed some help in the interior. You bring in A'Shawn Robinson, Shy Tuttle. He needs to be better. Maybe having an A'Shawn Robinson on the roster will help him out as well this upcoming season. And just comparing him to Deshaun Williams, last year his PFF grade was 58.6. That was 75th out of 131 defensive linemen. As far as interior defensive linemen go, Deshaun Williams was a 50.0. That was 104th. So you had one of the worst interior defensive linemen as a starter for you last year. You get a little bit better with A'Shawn Robinson, who has the pedigree, haven't been a second-round pick out of Alabama, where Deshaun Williams has really been a journeyman, and so has A'Shawn Robinson, but Robinson's at least been staying in the league this entire time. Then a run defense grade for him last year was a 60.6. That was 49th out of 137. You look at Deshaun Williams, it was 46.1. Not good at all. Deshaun Williams is now 31 years old. A'Shawn Robinson getting close to 30, but still under that age. He is somebody that I think can help the Carolina Panthers this season, stopping the run. So to have him, having Derek Brown back, I would think Scheitel's got to be much better. And then having some experience with Nick Thurman now and LeBron Ray both coming back, this is an improved unit on a defensive line. So that's one area that has absolutely, in my opinion, improved when it comes to the Carolina Panthers defense heading into 2024 after 1 week of free agency. Edge rusher. Yeah, it's worse. I'm just going to go out there and say it before we even get into it. It's worse. You don't lose a two-time Pro Bowler. You don't lose someone who has had 46 sacks in the first 5 years of his career. You don't lose a player who is entering his prime and get better. It just does not happen, especially when the edge rusher market that's available to the Carolina Panthers after they moved on from Brian Burns was never going to yield that kind of a talent. Now, if they wanted that kind of a talent, they would have paid him, but things were complicated. You can agree with the Panthers, what they did. You can also agree with Brian Burns. I don't think one side is right or wrong. I do think what is true is the Carolina Panthers did not get nearly enough for Brian Burns, but what is also true is the Panthers were never going to be able to recoup those draft picks that they did not get when they decided to turn down the Rams offer back in October of 2022. So we move on. Looking at the moves made so far, signing DJ Woonem to a 2-year, $12.5 million deal. I like that for the Carolina Panthers. Made 14 starts last year in 15 games at 8 sacks, 62 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 23 career sacks through 4 seasons in Minnesota is fine. He's a player who's entering into what should be his prime. So the hope is that the 8 sacks, which he's done now twice, did it in 23, did it in 21, that can be more of a consistent level for him as far as the output, sack totals wise go. Couldn't find pressure rate. I know that NFL Next Gen stat puts it out there, but they don't put it like readily available for people to find. Pro Football Reference doesn't really have it. So the only pass rushing grade I can go off of that kind of similar to that is what PFF put out, and they have his pass rushing grade at a 56.8, which is bad, y'all. He got 8 sacks last year, so he got home. When he did get an opportunity, he did not falter. But that pass rush grade, that is something that concerns me. That was 86 out of 104 edge rushers in the NFL last year. Brian Burns, he had like a 75.1. That's pretty good. And we know Brian Burns is a better player. Woonem, though, he's entering into a time where he's going to be 27 coming up, and he's hopefully going to be a player that can be a consistent starter for the Carolina Panthers like he was last year and in periods of time in Minnesota, who can now come in. He's going to be the de facto top-tier edge rusher for the Panthers just based off of what they have returning with only DJ Johnson, Amari Barno, and Akuliota. We'll see what else they're able to bring in who could potentially be a starter for him. He only has 3 multi-sack games in his career, and that's through 62 games. But the Panthers weren't really used to getting that anyways. Brian Burns only has 6. He has 7 if you want to count as far as having games of more than 1 sack. He had 1.5 sacks in 1 game in his career. One of them still only 3. The Panthers weren't used to having guys going out there and collecting 2 sacks, 3 sacks in the game. And one of them actually has had 3 sacks in a single contest back in 2021. That was nearly half of his sack total that year. This is hopefully an ascending player who can help out the Carolina Panthers. One thing to be concerned about, though, is he is coming off of an injury. I believe it was a torn quad that he had to have surgery on at the end of the season back in December. So we'll see if he's going to miss any time during OTAs, because that is something that can be concerning for the Panthers, as they don't want to have a player who's they're expecting a lot of, not available for a large part of the offseason program. They also had a Caleb Chase on Friday. He's just straight up been a bust so far, y'all. He's played 57 games. He's made 11 starts. He has 5 career sacks. This was the 20th overall pick in the same draft class as DJ Woonem, and he has produced at a paltry level so far. Now, Todd Wash is someone who was a defensive coordinator there in Jacksonville when he was drafted by the Jags. He's now here as a defensive line coach in Carolina. He's not going to always work with him, but you would think that Todd Wash had a say or vouched rather for Chase on to come to Carolina. So we'll see. Can he be redeemed? His pass rushing grade, by the way, is better than Woonem's, a 58.2 last year. Now, far less pass rushing opportunities and snaps played last year compared to Woonem in Minnesota, and yet also recognize that DJ Woonem was playing on the opposite side of Danielle Hunter at 16.5 sacks this past season. He will not get that benefit next year. Would have been nice to be able to have Brian Burns still here and then added a player in DJ Woonem. Would have felt really good about that pairing moving forward. That is not the pairing in Carolina. They still are interested in bringing on Jadeveon Clowney. We'll see if that happens, but either way, even with Clowney, this is a unit that is worse than it was a year ago when you take away a player who's a 2-time Pro Bowler, who is ascending into his prime. That's tough for the Carolina Panthers. Linebacker, Same kind of case. They signed Josie Jewell to a 3-year, $22.7 million deal. He's going to get $7 million signing bonus, $10 million guaranteed. The Panthers wanted to get Patrick Queen after they watched Frankie Luvu pick Washington instead of them. Again, they paid more, but he decided to take the Washington Commanders offer instead. We'll see how that works out. Wish Frankie, again, the best of luck. They pivoted to Patrick Queen, but he took a 3-year, $41 million deal in Pittsburgh. Don't think the Panthers wanted to spend that much money anyways, but they lost out on Patrick Queen to the Steelers. They landed on Jewell, who played well in his lone season with Ejiro Evero in 2022 in Denver. Career high 128 tackles. His last 3 healthy seasons, he's had 100-plus tackles. Last year, he graded out as the 27th best linebacker in the NFL. Think he's a fine player for the Panthers. Maybe not the best in coverage, but he can fill gaps when it comes to the run game. He can wear the green dot if they need him to do that. I think he can get sideline to sideline well enough as far as that part of the field. I feel good about the signing, but he's not a better player than Frankie Luvu. So clearly they've gotten worse at linebacker through 1 week of free agency, and there's still plenty of time to come as far as the Panthers are going to be able to do at that position. Corner. This one's interesting. The Panthers signed Buffalo Bills cornerback Dane Jackson to a 2-year deal worth up to $14.5 million. So they got rid of Donte Jackson, brought in Dane Jackson, so a new D-Jack here in Carolina. He started 28 games over 4 seasons in Buffalo, a former 7th-round pick who Dan Morgan was like banging on the table for late in that draft 4 years ago, saying, hey, we need this guy to come in here. And he's fought and clawed his way to stay in the NFL to where he's getting an opportunity to start here in Carolina this upcoming season. If you look at his numbers last year compared to Donte Jackson, now lesser snaps played than Donte, they're pretty comparable. His PFF grade last year was a 62.7. Dante's a 64.3. So Jackson was a 71st corner. Donte was a 63rd corner. His coverage grade was a 69.7. Dante's was 66.6. So he was a 42nd graded corner. And coverage wise, that was Dane Jackson. Donte was 53rd. Run defense grade, they're both terrible at it. Dane was particularly bad, 28.8, 120th out of 121 corners. Donte was a 52.3, 93rd. So as far as overall grade, coverage grade, pretty much the same player in a way. And then looking at some other stats, this is from Pro Football Reference. Dane Jackson allowed a 74.3 completion percentage, a 109.6 passer rating, 17.0 missed tackle percentage. Donte Jackson allowed a 67.2 completion percentage. So it's a little bit better than Dane Jackson, but his passer rating was 107.7 allowed. That's just a tick better than Dane Jackson as well. Missed tackle percentage, 16.9. So you're getting another corner who's not great when it comes to stopping the run. You're getting a corner, though, who's putting him up comparable numbers to Donte Jackson and is not taking $15.7 million of your salary cap this upcoming season. Now, they are eating a significant amount of that as far as the dead cap goes. Dane Jackson, not a bad signing for the Carolina Panthers. Don't think it's a plus signing. I'm looking at the corner spot as a push right now. They do need to add more to it. You bring back Troy Hill. That's great. CJ Henderson's gone, and he's still out there on the market. Dante's going to be in Pittsburgh moving forward. I still think the Panthers need to go out and draft somebody, really. It'd be nice to get another veteran that they can bring in to be some competition, some sort of depth for the Panthers. We'll see. That's a push for me. Safety, I think it's slightly improved. Looking at Jordan Fuller, 1-year deal up to $5.25 million. Started 17 games last year, had 3 interceptions, 94 tackles, 8 pass breakups, opponent passer rating of an 86.0. Comparing him to Von Bell, who he's replacing here in Carolina. And understand this, Fuller has played in this system. He has sat actually in the same meeting room, position group room as Ejiro Evero back in their time in LA. This is a guy who really feels like a hand-picked kind of player to come in here and to be in this scheme after they parted ways with Von Bell. Comparing their PFF grades, last year overall grade for Fuller was a 66.7. That was 48th out of 95 safeties. Bell's was a 63.9. That was 61st. So better overall, according to Pro Football Focus. Coverage grade, 63.3 for Fuller. It's a 63.8 for Bell. So Bell was 49th out of the safeties in the league, whereas Fuller was 52nd. Run defense grade, 75.0. That was 20th out of 92 safeties for Fuller. And then run defense grade for Von Bell's 59.8. That was 70th. So much better when it comes to stopping the run. And pretty similar coverage grades. Overall grade, was a better player last year, has starting experience, knows the system. So for me, that feels like a slight improvement for the Carolina Panthers to get somebody who has starting experience, was a better player last year, and did not miss time, and also is a scheme fit for the Carolina Panthers there at the safety spot. So safety slightly improved, corner feels like a push, still an area of concern as they need to add some more players to that. Linebacker, you're not going to be better without Frankie Luvu. Edge rusher, same kind of case about Brian Burns. They're not better right now. They can still make some other moves. Still don't feel like overall it's going to be the best unit coming into 2024. The defensive line is improved. So there are areas where the Panthers have gotten worse. There are areas the Panthers have gotten better or slightly better. I'm still skeptical that this defense can be as good as it was a year ago, where really the only reason the Panthers can get blown out of the building every single week was because of the way that these guys played, especially in the second half of the season. Let's take a quick pause and just look at the Panthers overall and think about where this team is heading as they look forward to the pro days going on in colleges and ahead to the NFL draft here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most of your retirement thanks to the IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Okay, so looking at the Panthers overall, I do feel like the offense has improved, and they couldn't get worse, y'all. They really couldn't get worse. And you knew this team was going to do all it could within reason to make this team better. They've gone out and fixed the offensive line. Ike Ekwonu staying at left tackle. The hope is that he's going to play better under Joe Gilbert in this new offensive scheme where they're going to want to be, it feels like, a run-first team in 2024 with Dave Canales as their head coach and play caller. You also look at adding Robert Hunt and Damien Lewis, two proven players in the NFL. Hunt, one of the best offensive linemen and certainly one of the highest paid offensive linemen now after getting that 5-year, $100 million deal a week ago. Corbett, we'll see how that works out at center. I'll have to talk to Jordan Rodriguez, who used to cover the Panthers, and get her perspective on Austin Corbett and why he did not stick at center when he was there with the Rams during that Super Bowl season a couple of years ago. Then Taylor Moton, no concern about him. Brady Christensen now adds depth as that swing tackle, can also come in and play guard. We did see some bright spots in Cade Mays last year, so we'll see what that looks like. Chandler Zavala, still a player who may have a future as a Panther starter down the road. Who knows? Right now, it's going to be Lewis. It's going to be Hunt. They're not going to sit here and wait to see what his development is, but you're going to need him to develop so that you have some quality depth. That is a better position group than it was a year ago, even though I myself felt like that was going to be the strength of the roster. That did not turn out to be the case. Injuries are a big reason, but also they just did not play well. There was a number of regression throughout the position group when it came to Icky, it came to Bozeman, came to a lot of the guys that went out there and played a year ago. So got that one wrong. Hand up. That's on me. Wide receiver, I still don't feel like they have a wide receiver one. I think they need a big-bodied kind of guy, 6'3", 6'4" kind of receiver. It would be nice if Terrace Marshall could eventually step up to be that, or Mingo's got the nice size. If he could step up and be that, I've seen enough from Marshall to know that that's probably not going to happen. Mingo, still early for him. New offense coaching staff, and we saw last year the offense coaching staff was not great, even though Sean Jefferson is a highly regarded wide receiver coach, and he wanted Mingo. We'll see what Mingo can do. A lot of wide receiver coaches now on the roster. Brad Idzik, who's the offensive coordinator. You have Nathan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son, who's also working with wide receivers in Seattle. They got a pretty good group of those guys out there in the PNW. So we'll see what the wide receiver core can look like overall with the development of some of the younger players. But Diontae Johnson, big signing for the Panthers. You look at Adam Thielen, I don't know. I wouldn't bet, y'all, that he's going to do what he did last year, especially with Johnson coming in, but also just getting up in age. Still think he can be a fairly productive player. And I was never concerned about what he would do last season, if you listen to the show, I felt like, yes, at age 33, you can get something out of Adam Thielen. I'm concerned about age 34 in 2024, how much you're going to get out of Adam Thielen. And I still have the same concerns, but if you can get, well, hell, you get half of what you got last year, I think you'll take that. But you would also need another wide receiver. I think the Carolina Panthers, though, certainly should still be interested in trying to get a wide receiver one. I think they should still be interested in a player that plays for the Cincinnati Bengals to be that person. And there's other players in the draft as well. So they still need to improve the wide receiver position, but a great trade by Dan Morgan, just looking at the value that they gave up and who they gave up to be able to get Diontae Johnson. Love making that happen. Defensively, they're just not going to be a better unit without Burns and without Luvu. Derek Brown's still here. JC Horn's got to stay healthy. The only player on this defense that you know for a fact is going to come out and perform every single Sunday is Derek Brown. The rest of them, you can't necessarily trust. I guess Xavier Woods would be one, but he was a little bit banged up last year. Shaq Thompson missing a lot of time last year. Not sure what he's going to look like coming into the season. JC is just not healthy. So the only really dependable factor on that defense is Derek Brown. That's not good enough for the Carolina Panthers. I do expect there to be some regression. Now, the hope with the offense likely improving, and I think there's no way they're not going to improve. That should help the Carolina Panthers defense, as they are going to take a little bit of a regression and probably put them in better situations than they were in last year, which is a big reason why they gave a ton of points and probably also why they weren't great in the red zone. And it's also the second year in this scheme under Rogero Rivera. But overall, I do think they've gotten better. I don't know how much better. You have to understand that a lot of teams in the NFL spent money in bringing in players over the course of the last week, and those teams were already good football teams. So you have to recognize that is the case. The Falcons have brought in Kirk Cousins, and they have put around Kirk Cousins some pretty damn good weapons, and that was a team that was pretty mid last year, but they weren't terrible, and they've been mid as hell for the last couple of seasons. I think Atlanta's probably going to be pretty good. New Orleans, they still got Derek Carr there, and he didn't play particularly well. They signed Chase Young, and that's going to be something that's going to upset Carolina Panther fans. We'll see what they can be. Tampa Bay, they're running it back of Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield's coming back. Antoine Winfield, got Levante David. That should still be a team that's going to be pretty good next year. Like, I do think the NFC South as a whole should be improved. Like, if Baker can play like he played last year, even without Dave Canales, they're in a good spot. If Kirk Cousins comes off of that Achilles and looks like he's looked the last 5+ years, Atlanta's going to be a pretty good team. New Orleans, they're not going to be bad. I don't know how good they're going to be. They're going to be pretty mid, not in my opinion, and that may be it for Dennis Allen there in NOLA. The Panthers, though, they're a team they still got a ways to go. So what really matters is this team building through the draft. Not having to give up too many picks for Diontae Johnson, being able to still have pick 33, be able to get pick 39 with that Brian Burns trade, even though you would have liked more, you would have at least wanted them to get something equivalent to a first rounder. That did not happen. Having 2 picks in the top 40 when you don't have your first round pick, I think that's key for the Carolina Panthers. They can address edge right at the top. They can address corner. They can address wide receiver if they want to do that. They have options, and they still have a pick 65. They have, I think, pick 101 right there in the 4th round. So still, basically, that's 4 picks basically in the top 100. That's a decent position for the Carolina Panthers to be in. So yeah, that's right there in front of me, of course. 33, 39, 65, 101. So not technically in the top 100. We have 4 picks right there, pretty much in the top 100. You have to appreciate that as the Panthers head into the draft cycle. We'll see what they're able to do. I know with the free agents that they sign that, I don't know. I can't say I know, but it is unlikely outside of guys like Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis that the players that they signed last week are going to be a big part of this rebuild moving forward. My hope is a player like DJ Woonem can do that. My hope also is that Diontae Johnson can. He's going to be a free agent after this year, and we'll see how things play out with him in Carolina and also what his market is next off season. Josie Jewell, Ashawn Robinson, like those aren't long-term answers there. Even Jordan Fuller on a 1-year deal. We'll see how that works out for him. Dane Jackson at the corner spot. The Panthers still have areas like safety, like corner, like I mentioned, wide receiver, running back probably, where they need linebacker, where they need to go find some younger, cost-controlled players in the draft. The best path out of this is via the draft. It's great offensively to spend money on the offensive line because you have to keep your quarterback upright. You need to be able to run the football, take some pressure off your quarterback. It's also smart to go out there and to get a wide receiver in Diontae Johnson. But overall roster construction, the best path forward for the Carolina Panthers is via the draft. You want to draft your team, and then you want to supplement whatever holes you have via free agency. And you also want to re-sign your players who play at a high level for you. They re-signed McCaffrey, but they traded him. They re-signed DJ Moore, but they traded him. They didn't want to re-sign Brian Burns, and that was a relationship that was fractured. So they had really no choice at the end of the day but to trade him, as far as that's how the team felt. Derek Brown, good player. He's done everything right. That's the guy you got to pay. If J.C. Horn can stay healthy, that's the guy that you're going to want to pay down the road. Bryce Young, same case. If he plays well, you're going to do that. Start retaining your good players, stop trading away, and do a damn better job in the draft. And this could finally be a serious franchise under David Tepper. Now, he's got to get his act together as well, but I think you understand what I'm saying there. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter, at Julian Council, where I'm back on Friday to answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.